Welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Eric Bolling. How will the United States respond to Iran after we busted up its plot to carry out a terror attack on U.S. soil? Some call it an act of war. The vice president, though, was waffling today. Listen.
Some members of Congress, including the head of the Homeland Security Committee, are calling this alleged Iranian plot an act of war. Mr. Vice President, do you?
No, what I call it is an incredibly serious attempt to do something that was really unheard of.
Joining me now, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser of the American Islamic Forum on Democracy, and Mike Baker, former CIA covert ops officer. Dr. Jasser, let's start with you, sir. I mean, when we heard this broke around 3:30 yesterday afternoon, sounded like a very, very scared terror plot. Do you see it as an act of war yourself?
Well, I think it's an act of what we all expect, which is part of a Cold War that nobody really is paying attention to, that we somehow seem to have blinders on. And maybe this will wake the United States and especially the administration up that we're in a Cold War. There's no different than the paradigm we went through in defeating the communists. There are various versions of Islamism. They're all playing out in this so-called Arab Spring. You have a triangulation between the Iranians trying to hegemonize through Syria and Hezbollah, and even Iraq recently came out in support of the Syrian thuggery. And then you have the Arab states, the Gulf states, vying for control from their form of Islamism, and then you have the Turks trying to reawaken their Ottoman desires and working with Egypt, etc. So that triangulation we've been missing in action. And what they're doing is now, after the Iranian president's just absurd speech that he gave at the UN, where he blamed America on everything and really came to our soil and gave an insulting speech about American influence, they are basically saying that we're going to stay asleep. American soft power is part of the history, and they're going to use our soil to sow chaos in the Middle East, like they're trying to do with this assassination attempt.
All right, guys. Mike Baker, listen to this. This is John McCain weighing in. This is Z1, fellas.
We need to impose more sanctions. We need to stop their central bank from doing business with anybody. But we also, is it possible, Sean, that the Iranians may think that we are weak and in decline? Do you think they would have tried this with Ronald Reagan?
So Mike, that was from Sean Hannity's show last night. But what about what he said there? The sanctions, the financial sanctions. We don't do business with Iran anyway. Is that enough?
You know, with the sanctions, ultimately, we've got very little room left to move in the sanctions field, and you know, it's not going to have the desired effect. Act of war? No, this was an act of terrorism. It's been going on for decades. I disagree with Senator McCain, as much respect as I have for him. Of course, they would do this during the Reagan years. They did this during the Reagan years. They influenced and sowed terrorism, you know, around the world. And again, I think we know clearly the Iranian-Syrian linkage. We couldn't get, you know, a harshly worded statement through the UN Security Council about Syria. You think we're going to get any movement of any substance against Iran right now? I seriously doubt it.
All right, Dr. Z, let's listen to Z3. This is Splash of Cold Water. Take a listen to this.
Well, this is sort of a splash of cold water on our face to say, hey, guys, while you're there looking at the Arab Spring, we're facing an Iranian winter. And these guys are coming to get us. They're plotting, and let's be aware of it. It continues to be the greatest threat to the United States.
So what about it, Doc? Are we opening up another Cold War, or are we already in it?
We're already in it. We're long in it. 9/11 should have been the salvo that awoken us to that. And what do we do next? Because the Saudis, Iran would like nothing more than us to appear to be the saviors for the Saudi Wahhabi radical Sunni regime, per se. So what do we do next? We need to start advocating for liberty. We need a president that's going to make that evil empire speech to say that we are going to advocate for the people of Saudi Arabia, the people of Iran that we walked away from in 2009, the people of Syria that's been massacred by the surrogates from Iran, the snipers, the money that continues to shell their people. We haven't had that type of leadership, and they're going to continue to play us for fools while they try to assassinate their biggest other gangs in the neighborhood in the Middle East. And we need to wake up to what we need to advocate for, which is freedom and liberty movements in the Middle East. That's
very, very interesting that you point that out, Mike. I found that striking also, Mike Baker, that the Iranians were targeting a Saudi. Now, I get it. They perceive the Saudis as kind of in bed with us with the whole oil deals and whatnot. But really, for the first time, I see the Iranians really going after a superpower in the Middle East, mind you.
Right. No, this has been something that, and the doctors alluded to this, the fact that we've missed this or ignored it or chose to ignore it, increasing animosity that's been building between the Saudis and the Iranians, over their perceived influence in the region. But ultimately, what's our best chance? Our best chance has been for some time, and we've been hoping for it. It's unlikely, I suspect, for an uprising, for the people themselves within Iran to rise up. I mean, for decades now, we've been talking about this and trying to, in some fashion, promote it. And again, without that, it's very likely that they will continue to march along to their own drummer. The sanctions will not have the impact that we'd like to. And all the talk about, declaring it an act of war, ultimately, hey, that plays great for the cameras, but it's not realistic.
All right, going to have to leave it there. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and Mike Baker, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Bringing out tonight's panel. On the left, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. On the right, joining us via satellite, radio host Mike Gallagher. And here with me, also in studio with Juan, is Fox contributor Monica Crowley. The details of this plot were known almost 2 weeks ago. Why weren't those details announced then? Did it have anything to do with a congressional investigation into Fast and Furious that's been dogging the Attorney General for months? Take a listen to Eric Holder at the press conference on the bomb plot.